Hey everybody, this is Oscar Roca with another Please Be Still Moments. I'm making sure that the screen is right. I'm moving around just to make sure it doesn't do that flashing thing. Uh, Oscar Roca here with another Please Be Still Moments blog post. You've got all my information down at the bottom. If you like what you see, if you are blessed by it, the only thing I ask is to like, subscribe, and also send out to other people. Pass it along because it takes time to do all these things. And while I am here at home recovering, I have been. Um, it does take time. Today, I was not feeling all 100%. My voice is a little weird. You may not hear it, but I woke up a little off today, and it's just I've got some issues again with the cancer and all that stuff, but that's not going to stop me. Lord willing, I continue to do this, and it's another Thanksgiving season that 2025. I'll explain a little bit more. But welcome again. And I want to show you, I have to move this arm more. And I want to show you the history of, to me, the greatest country to have ever been formed, not not modern day, the United States, modern day now. I want you to take a trip with me back in time and what this word says. Believe it or not, everything in here has been proven to be 100%. There is nothing here prophetically speaking from Genesis all the way from Malachi, Matthew, the four gospels, all the way to Revelation that hasn't happened or will happen. A lot of prophecy is still to come, but the odds of, and we're going to be talking about odds, and that is something incredible for me because the odds of a living God doing what he does is amazing to me. I'm going to lower this a little bit more because there we go. Okay, that's a lot better. It's hitting me on the face. You could still see me. But before the turkey, the football, the Black Friday specials here in this country, I want to have you go back in time and I want to show you what this country was about, why God gave this country an incredible blessing that you may not be aware of. You don't live in the United States. We are celebrating Thanksgiving next week Thursday. Every single year there's a Thanksgiving a holiday. I call it a holy day. It is the holiest of days for this country because it is time where we recollect, we re-examine ourselves, at least Christians, to thank God, to to give us more favor from Him, to gain more from Him in blessings, not monetarily, not militarily, none of that. And I'll explain that to you. And I hope that wow, okay, I just and I'm going to continue. So the first Thanksgiving, there's historical data on this. I'm going to flip it here and here. The first Thanksgiving, the historical details of the 1621 feast, the first Thanksgiving, I clicked it. I want you to see what this is all about. Okay. Without the natives helping the Plymouth colony, where Plymouth colony is now Massachusetts area, it involved English colonists, often called pilgrims, and pilgrims were a separatist, and I'll explain what that is in a little bit. But they were separating themselves. They were the separated ones, the separated brethren who wanted to worship God on their own, the way they wanted to worship God, not the way the Anglican Church or the Roman Pope. The Anglican Church was the chief religion of England and the British Isle and all the British Empire. You could not go anywhere in the English speaking world, worldwide, without knowing that you were part of England, the Church of England. You could not go outside of please forgive me, my voice, I am straining right now. You could not go outside of the non-English speaking empire and not be forced into Catholicism through the Roman Pope or the papacy. Um, the the Plymouth colony was started. It involved English colonists called the Pilgrims. They were and the members of the Wampanoag Nation, marking not only a successful first year of harvest, but a successful first year of settling within the Wampanoag community and not only being helped by them, but more importantly, being able to maintain what they had. There were 102 um, people that came into the Mayflower, into the ship. They settled in Plymouth, and more than half that first winter killed almost more than half survived, but nearly half of them did not. And that is a very cruel thing to understand. When I hear okay, here's my non-political because I have to tell the truth. And the truth is, look at my skin color. Okay, look at my skin color. I am of European and Native blood, or Native European blood, Native American European blood. So what I'm saying is from what I gather as a Christian man, as an independent thinker. We cannot blame a certain ethnicity for the atrocities that happened before the pilgrims came, during the pilgrims' journey, and after the pilgrims settled. There, in this land, in this Western hemisphere, I'll give you the numbers later, but there were tribes that conquered and were conquered. There were tribes that killed and were killed. And it's not a very political thing to say because a lot of people want to blame a certain ethnicity, and I don't blame them. The people that came here were Christians, true Christian worshipers. Now, what I mean by that, they weren't perfect, but they sure were not what they are being called now by the some of the smaller communities, ethnic communities that think that because they're brown or black, that they could blame others for their misgivings, their misfortunes, their shortcomings. It has been almost, we're going to be celebrating, how many years are we going to be celebrating next year? This country was founded on the fact that we say 1776, but the country was founded in 1620. So now we are in the year 2000. Those things that have happened all along have made this country what it is. There are blessings and there are things that they did. I don't put my head in the sand. I grew up and I was a darker skinned Hispanic, and I grew up and I heard from all from whites and even Hispanics, believe it or not, I'm going to say this again, Hispanics are just as, if you want to say uh, uh, racist, I got called every name in the book because I was dark. People in Mexico, indigenous people in Mexico are treated differently than the European Mexicans. So all that say, and this is coming from me personally because that's all I know. I know Mexico. I know Mexican Americans here. I know of Hispanics here, and there is a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy in the Black community. There is a hierarchy in the white community. There's a hierarchy in the Asian community because we are human beings that are wicked. Our hearts are totally wicked. That's not going to change until there is a regeneration, a transformation of the heart. And I'll be talking about that. But now, going back, the modern depictions often romanticize what Thanksgiving was all about. It was, we had plays when I was a kid that we need to do more plays. We need to teach our kids, our young ones, as early as Head Start, what this country is all about. It is a very it is a great country. I don't care what anybody says. Compared to other countries, this country is the greatest country that has ever been because of the blessing that you're going to be talking about. It's not necessarily the military, like I said. It's not necessarily the the money, the financial. It is a blessing that God bestowed on this country because the people that came originally, the settlers, wanted to make a country. They wanted to have their own place where they would be able to worship and pass it on and share the good news of Jesus Christ. So the 52 survivors, mostly men, only 4 adult women. It goes on. Here's what happened the first year. It was brutal. It was brutal. So the Wampanoag people, at least 90 men, arrived unannounced after hearing gunfire, which was a celebratory thing that the not the pilgrims, but the crew, the members of the crew were doing. They came, they sat down. Women and families that may have joined later or assisted in the preparations. But here's the cool part. They brought stuff, they brought gifts to the people, the settlers. About 140, 150 people were there welcoming in the English. So the gathering was diplomatic, and that's the cool part about this. It started with diplomacy. Remember, I'm not sure if you know the history. I have another video if you want to know more in detail what happened in the odds. We're going to talk about the odds, but I show you the CDC screenshot of what happened during 16 17, 16 18, 16 19, right before the settlers came in. There was an epidemic that had weakened the Wampanoag nation, and the Wampanoag Nation, that village of Patuxent, we'll talk about it a little bit more. Everybody left. It was, everybody left. They left everything. They left corn. They left seeds. They left baskets. They left everything. They just up and left because they were afraid of what was happening with the epidemic. That was a true pandemic. It was an epidemic. It was a pandemic. Okay, so it was 3 days of harvest celebrations. It lasted 3 days because there was feasting, but they were also, after everything that happened, the pilgrims realized and they were fasting. That's all I'm going to say right now because there's more to it. They helped the pilgrims survive the first year. So the Mayflower Compact was signed by all those that traveled in on the Mayflower, and it's the first foundational document for American democracy, representing an early form of self-governance, away from kings, away from popes. Um, it protected the rights of anybody coming in here. They foresaw, and it wasn't them; it was God who inspired these people to write what they wrote because they wanted to keep away from religion being forced by a government or a state or an empire, a king, a queen, a pope. It's not the other way around. We have gotten so far opposite, and it wouldn't you know it that the enemy, Satan, loves turning things around. You could see it in our history. They came in, the pilgrims said, we will never have anybody, we will never force anyone to be Christian. We will never force anyone to be a king or a queen. We will never have anybody telling others how to worship our God. So the Mayflower Compact Agreement was an agreement with the settlers, and what it says, and what you're looking at on the screen is the actual 1620 Mayflower Compact. In the name of God, amen. For those of you that are listening to this and saying or thinking or being taught that America is not a Christian nation, what it starts with, in the name of God, amen. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, Ireland, King, defender of the faith, and having undertaken for the glory of God an advancement of the Christian faith, There it is. In honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. Do by these present solemnly and mutually, by those that were present, solemnly and mutually in the presence of God, please forgive me, my voice is killing me, and one another, covenant and combine ourselves to get together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time, and shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience, in witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names at Cape Cod on the 11th of November in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King James of England, France, and Ireland, the 18th, and of Scotland, the 54th, Anno Domini 1620. Reasons for the creation: Mayflower was originally bound for the Hudson River. This is incredible. Just uh, it would be modern day New York or Manhattan, but they ended up north. Okay, so it was a Virginia colony, was all that. Um, Passengers were known as strangers, pilgrims, argued that they were no longer bound by the Virginia Company's charter, leading to potential chaos. Sorry, strangers were non pilgrims. They were the crew and they were some of the security. To prevent discord and ensure survival, the pilgrim leaders drafted the compact. It established key features of the government, elements that would be used in the Constitution of the United States later. So they pledged loyalty to King James. Of course, they were going to say that. They couldn't say that. They couldn't unsay that, while allowing the settlers to create their own laws for the colony's general good. It was a social contract where signers agreed to follow the community's rules, not only emphasizing cooperation with England and with King James, but more importantly with the citizens of the colony and outside, including the natives. Okay, and then they wrote, there were 41 men. I'm not going to get into all this. You can look at the Mayflower Compact and see who signed it. William Bradford's one of them. Miles Standish, you guys know that one. William Brewster, John Carver, there's more. But the cool part is it is considered a foundational document for the American Republic, the republic that would go on to do the Constitution. Early form of self-governance, collective decision making. It was, again, it was a precedent of the future of the Constitution of the United States, which was great. William Bradford, Church of England, separatist pilgrim. There was a reason why he came. He, when he was around 13, he was a teenager. He wanted to pull away from the Church of England because he knew that, oh gosh, he wanted to be pure. That's his, that's, he wanted a pure, the pureness of what Christianity is, to love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, to love your neighbor with everything you have, with everything that you have for yourself. So if you love yourself, you're going to love your neighbor. And to preach the good news of Jesus Christ, what he did for somebody like me who uh, is forever thankful for my Lord and Savior and what he did, dying on the cross as a sacrificial lamb to take away my sins, to shed his blood instead of mine. That's what they wanted to do. William Bradford, born 1590, 1657, was a key figure in the founding of Plymouth Colony, born in Austerfield, Yorkshire, England. He became a separatist, a Puritan dissenter from the Church of England. As a teenager, he left, fleeing religious persecution to Holland or the Netherlands in 1608 with all his congregation. Keep that in mind. Those would be, some of those would be the people that would come to the New World. There he weaved and married Dorothy May in 1613. They had one son who was left behind, I think because he wanted to. His most famous work of Plymouth Plantation, which I have, and I will tell you this much. For you Christians, when we're thinking we're living right before Revelation, they were thinking they were living right before Revelation. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, read his book. It's wonderful. Um, all that said, he composed a private journal and then passed it on to his family and to his family and to his family. Keep going generations. The manuscript he had for the Mayflower voyage, for the Mayflower Compact, what he spoke about the passengers and their descendants as of 1650. Of course, he couldn't go further than that because then he passed on. But the providence he spoke of, this this incredible God's will or providential will of seeing their every step and moving with that, which is actually pretty cool. Prophetic. I read this a while back. I couldn't understand why, even before when I first did my first study. I never understood because I didn't think that the Judeans or the Israelites, were seafaring people. The only time that in the Bible that we talk about seafaring people are the fishermen in the New Testament, the 12 apostles. A lot of them were, or the first four, um, and the pilgrims. There was no other for me. In the Old Testament would be the Exodus account of the sea parting, but that's not a ship. They weren't in a ship. They just walked through. So in Psalm 107, verse 23, 28, and 29, you can read Psalm 107. I'll show you in a little bit. They that go down to the sea in the ships, that do business in great waters. He maketh the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Two places. William Bradford of Plymouth Plantation, again, was a key figure. Uh, you can read, if you want to read what it says, Psalm 107, they that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, these see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep, for he commandeth and raises the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves thereof. They mount up to the heavens, and then they go down again to the depths. Their soul is melted because of trouble. That is a perfect storm that they're talking about. The waves are just going up and then they're coming, the ship is just coming down. That didn't happen in the Exodus experience. It happened with the 12 disciples or the 12 apostles when Jesus was asleep, and we'll talk about it. That they reel to and fro, stagger like drunken men or man, and are at their wits' end. They're going nuts. Then they cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he, who? The Lord, bringeth them out of the distresses. He maketh the storm calm, so that the waves thereof are still. I, I, I'm one of those that speed reads, and when I stopped this and I had to do a deep search on this, they go down to the sea in ships that do business in great waters. 28. Then they cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he bringeth them out of their distress. He maketh the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Again, the number one for me, when I read this, I thought of the 12 apostles. They were crying and they were going nuts, and they were just fighting and fighting the storm, and they weren't getting anywhere, and Jesus is asleep. And Jesus, arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Mark chapter 4, verse 39. If you read Mark, Jesus has been going up and down Galilee in the sea, around the Sea of Galilee. He's moving between two locations, both around the Sea of Galilee, also called Lake of Gennesaret, or the Sea of Tiberias, the Romans named it. Here's a breakdown. Okay, so verse 1, Jesus teaching by the Sea of Galilee. The crowd is so large that he gets into a boat and sits in the water while the people are on the shore. Most likely Capernaum, that was his home base. And then it goes on. He goes in, he's asleep, and you can see it from verse 35. I'm not going to read it all the way down, but he's asleep and he gets up, he arose. He goes, at verse 38, and he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow, and they awake him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace be still. And the wind ceased, and there was great calm. This is one of my favorite verses because this is where I get please be still. I often would see Jesus with my hyperactivity, with my ADD, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, me going from one to another, and being able to handle that. I could see Jesus just shaking his head, putting his hand, rubbing his forehead, and saying, Please be still. Mijo, his son, my son, just please be still. I calmed the storm and I can't calm you. How are you going to do that? And hence, guys, as I'm saying this, ladies and gentlemen, I had to get sick. I had to get cancer in 2011. I had to get back cancer in 2023. He wanted me to calm. He wanted me to write. He wanted me in my own private Patmos for this reason. Now, the first thing that I got when I read this is, wow, how the apostles, number one, how they missed it. If their Lord was there, their teacher, their rabbi was laying there, had they seen him nervous or looking around like this, that'd be something. But he was asleep. He was asleep. He was asleep. That should have told him that everything would be okay. Or the second reason, and to me, I am leaning on number one and a foreshadowing of number two. And I say this with the utmost respect to those Bible scholars that probably may not have thought of that. I would say that he wrote this not only for the disciples, for his very own 12.